We are live, joining back from WeWork. Right. I am interested in Poor Charlie's Almanack. I saw I saw Sprite Press. Sprite Press did a beautiful cover of Poor Charlie's Almanack. I don't know what the partnership over there is like between Scribes Publishing, and this book, but they kind of republish it with better cover. Um, it looked beautiful. I wanted to pick it up, but I didn't pick it up. And now I'm just curious. I am very curious. We are supposed to learn from the best. So let's learn from poor Charlie. Let's learn from Charlie Munger. Poor Charlie's. Let's learn from Charlie Munger. The written wisdom of Charlie D. Munger. Compilation of speeches, talks, insights from Charlie Munger, the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett's longtime partner. Edited by Peter Kaufman, first published in 2005 with expanded editions later released, including a 23 abridged version by Stripe Press. Inspiration from Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanack, reflecting Munger's admiration for Franklin's practical wisdom. Hmm. Poor Richard's Almanack, Poor Charlie's Almanack. It's a dense multidisciplinary guide to decision-making, investing, and life, blending Munger's stock root with lessons from business, psychology, history, philosophy, and more. 11 talks, 86 to 1,000 serves with topics like the psychology of human misjudgment, a lesson on elementary worldly wisdom. It also has biographical sketches, Munger's aphorisms, and reflections from family and associates. All of these are beautiful. You're going to dive into each one of them. Tell me more about this one. Tell me, give me, give me. Munger's. I'll go back into it. 23 edition features a foreword by Stripes John Collison. Munger advocates a lattice work of mental models using concepts from multiple disciplines. Using concepts from multiple disciplines, psychology, physics, economics to make better decisions. He emphasizes avoiding cognitive biases and Lollapalooza effects when multiple biases compound. Investment philosophy. Munger and Buffett focus on long-term patient investing, waiting for pitches, and betting big on high-quality opportunities. They prioritize integrity, avoiding unethical practices like insider trading. Munger stresses curiosity, lifelong learning, go to bed wiser than you woke up, and avoiding folly, envy, addiction, toxic people. He values humility and rational thinking over genius. Perception widely praised. This is beautiful. Envy, addiction, toxic people. He values humility and rational thinking over genius. Perception widely praised as $1 billion education. It's a favorite among investors and thinkers for its depth and unconventional wisdom. Critics note redundancy due to repeated ideas across speeches and occasional self-praise, but some find distracts from Munger's humility. The book's large, glossy format, over 5 pounds, can be unwieldy, enduring influence with users recommending annual rereads for its pure magic insights. Hardcover audiobook, hardcover 60 to 96, copies at 79. Google charliesalmanac.com for official sources. Look at how the official website looks like right here. PC publications. Oh wow. Yes, Stripe Press. This is the beautiful one. Wow. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, is this free? This is free. Wow, this is free. Here's one, two, three. If you click on seven. Wait, what does that mean? Can you just read the entire book? Front cover forward. Front cover. 4 by Warren Buffett. Rebuttal. Introduction. Back matter. Buy. Listen. There's an old two-part rule that often wouldn't. Okay, okay. Go back, go back, go back, go back, go back. What is business science? Take a simple idea and take it very seriously. Okay, got it. Got it. Got it. Take a simple idea and take it very seriously. The psychology of human misjudgment. Wow. So you basically have this to the entire book, and we are gonna post that. You're gonna post that. You're gonna post that. Wow. Started Seeking Wisdom by Peter for a short introduction, then dive into Coach Charlie's Almanack for depth. Best for active readers willing to engage deeply, skimming won't suffice. Ideal for investors, entrepreneurs, or anyone seeking a framework for rational decision making. Okay, so what should we do? Should we look at beautiful quotes? Let's look at beautiful quotes, and then we will look into the book. On thinking and decision making, you must force yourself to consider opposing arguments, especially when they challenge your best loved ideas. Emphasizes the need to stress test beliefs and avoid confirmation bias. Never allow myself to have an opinion on anything that I don't know the other side's argument better than they do. Advocates for intellectual rigor and understanding opposing views deeply. It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid. Decision making requires effort. Oversimplification is a trap. It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid. Take a simple idea and take it seriously. Success often lies in diligently applying basic timeless principles. Inward, always inward. Solve problems by working backward. Focus on what to avoid to achieve the desired outcome. The best way to get a good idea is to have a lot of ideas. Creativity and insight come from exploring a wide range of mental models, on learning and knowledge. In my whole life, I've known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. Lifelong reading across disciplines is essential for wisdom. Go to bed smarter than when you woke up. Prioritize daily learning to compound knowledge over time. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. Curiosity and adaptability trump raw talent. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. Curiosity and adaptability trump raw talent. You'd be amazed at how much Warren Buffett reads and how much I read. My children laugh at me. They think I'm a book with a couple of legs sticking out. A humorous take on his obsessive reading habit as a path to success. Acquire worldly wisdom and adjust your behavior accordingly. Build a lattice work of mental models and apply them practically. Investing in business. It's beautiful. Acquire worldly wisdom and adjust your behavior accordingly. You'll be amazed at how much Warren Buffett reads and how much I read. My children laugh at me. They think I'm a book with a couple of legs sticking out. The big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting. Patience is holding high quality investments yields best returns. It takes character to sit with all that cash to do nothing and get to where I am by going after mediocre opportunities. Discipline to wait for fat pitches is a competitive edge. If you don't get this elementary but mildly natural mathematics of elementary probability into your repertoire, then you go through a long life, like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Understanding probabilities is critical for sound investing. If you don't get this elementary but mildly unnatural mathematics of elementary probability into your repertoire, then you go through A long life like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. A great business at a fair price is superior to a fair business at a great price. Quality of the business matters more than a cheap valuation. There are worse situations than drowning in cash and sitting. I remember when I wasn't awash in cash and I don't want to go back. Liquidity provides optionality. Don't rush to deploy capital. The psychology of misjudgment is a terribly important thing to learn. Understanding cognitive biases is key to avoiding errors. The psychology of misjudgment is a terribly important thing to learn. Envy is a really stupid sin because it's the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. A witty jab at how envy destroys rational thinking without reward. The ethos of not fooling yourself is one of the best you could possibly have. It's powerful because it's so rare. Self-deception is a common but avoidable trap. A lot of people with high IQs are terrible investors because they have got terrible temperaments. Emotional discipline often outweighs raw intelligence. Man's imperfect, limited capacity brain easily drifts into working with what's easily available to it. Once against the availability bias, skewing decisions. Man's imperfect, limited capacity brain easily drifts into working with what's easily available to it. On life and character, always take the high road. It's far less crowded. Integrity and ethical behavior are rare but rewarding. The best armor of old age is a well spent life exceeding it. The best armor of old age is a well spent life preceding it. Live with purpose and discipline to age gracefully. You don't have to be brilliant, not only a little bit wiser than the other guys on average for a long, long time. Consistent small advantages compound into big wins. If you are not a little confused by what's going on, you don't understand it. Complexity and uncertainty are part of life. Embrace them humbly. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Discharge your duties faithfully and well. Slug by slug, day by day, in due course, you'll find your place. The call to steady, incremental self improvement. Trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Discharge your duties faithfully and well. Slug by slug, day by day, in due course, you'll find your place. On avoiding folly. It's remarkable how much long term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. Avoiding mistakes is often more powerful than chasing brilliance. Three things ruin people: drugs, liquor, leverage. A blunt warning against common paths to self destruction. You can't live a successful life surrounded by bad people. Choose your associates wisely to avoid negative influences. Majority of life's errors are caused by forgetting what one is really trying to do. Stay focused on your core objectives to avoid distraction. A majority of life's errors are caused by forgetting what one is really trying to do. If you mix raisins with turds, you still have turds. A colorful metaphor for avoiding bad deals or people, no matter the superficial appeal. Majority of life's errors are caused by forgetting what one is really trying to do. Let's pick a chapter. Number one, our school commencement speech, a lesson on elementary worldly wisdom as it relates to investment management and business. A lesson on elementary worldly wisdom as it relates to revisited practical thought. Howard Law School class of 48. Investment practices on leading charitable foundations. Breakfast meeting. Great financial scandal. Strengths and faults after considering interdisciplinary needs. 11. The psychology of human misjudgment. So what I'm interested in. I like the title of this one. A lesson on elementary worldly wisdom. But 11, let's go 11. Wow. The psychology. Talk 11. Whoa. This is beautiful. Whoever built this website, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Oh wait, I saw something going on over here. Berkshire. This is the Berkshire. No, no, we want the straight mode. It's beautiful. Psychology of human misjudgment. Selections from three talks after revisions by Charlie that included considerable new material. Okay, we'll roll this slowly. The website's kind of glitching right now because I'm pushing the website too much, but okay. Open sidebar, audiobook. Okay, preamble. In the run up to publishing the book, Charlie remarked that remarked one of the most important talks in our list, the psychology of human misjudgment, could use a little revising to bring it in line with the most current views on the subject. Little we know, Charlie's little revision would amount to a full-scale rewrite with loads of new material and a stop-the-press completion schedule. The talk features Charlie's original concept of behavioral finance, which has now burgeoned into its own academic field of study. As attendee Donald Hall recalls, Charlie was espousing his well-reasoned views on behavioral finance before the term was even coined. Charlie also addresses the importance of recognizing patterns to determine how humans behave both rationally and irrationally. He shares with us his checklist of 25 standard causes of human misjudgment, which contains observations that are ingenious, counterintuitive, and important. Values Charlie treasures in the work of other great thinkers throughout history. Counterintuitive, important. He also emphasizes the Lollapalooza power of psychological misjudgments in combination. Here, then, written exclusively for Poor Charlie's Almanack, is Charlie's magnum opus on why we behave the way we do. We wish you success in the application of these ideas in your own personal and business endeavors. Combined into one talk, never made. Considerable new material. Three talks were the Bray Lecture, Caltech Faculty Club, talk under the sponsorship of the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies, talk under the sponsorship of Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Only thought he could do better at age 81 than he did more than 10 years earlier, when he knew less, was more harried by a crowded life, was speaking from rough notes instead of revising transcripts. Wow, 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 wow. When I read transcripts of my psychology talks given about 15 years ago, I realized I could now create a more logical but much longer talk, including most of what a beautiful website. So much stuff going on. But immediately saw four big disadvantages. First, long talk because it was written out with more logical completeness would be more boring and confusing to many people than any earlier talk. This would happen because I would use idiosyncratic definitions of psychological tendencies in a manner reminiscent of both psychology textbooks and Euclid, and who read textbooks for fun or revisits Euclid. Second, because my formal psychological knowledge came only from skimming three psychology textbooks about 15 years ago. I know virtually nothing about any academic psychology data developed, yet in a longer talk containing guesses, I'll be criticizing much academic psychology. This sort of intrusion into a professional territory by an amateur would be sure to be resented by professors who would rejoice in finding my errors and might be prompted to respond to my published criticism by providing theirs. Why should I care about new criticism? Well, who likes new hostility? from articulate critics with their information advantage. Third, a longer version of my ideas would surely draw some disapproval from people formerly disposed to liking me. Not only would there be stylistic and substantive objection, but also there would be perceptions of arrogance in an old man who displayed much disregard for conventional wisdom while popping off on a subject in which he had never taken a course. Rothschild always called such a popping off the shoe button complex, name for the condition of a family friend who spoke in an oracular style on all subjects after becoming dominant in the shoe button business. The shoe button complex. Fourth, I might make a fool of myself. Despite these four very considerable objections, I decided to publish the much expanded version. Thus, after many decades in which I have succeeded mostly by restricting my attitude to jobs and methods in which I was unlikely to fail, I have now chosen a course of action in which I have no significant personal benefit to gain. I will surely give some pain to family members and friends, and I may make myself ridiculous. Why am I doing this? One reason may be that my nature makes me inclined toward diagnosing and talking about errors in conventional wisdom. And despite years of being smoothed out by hard knocks that were inevitable for one with my attitude, I don't believe life ever knocked all the boys' brashness out of the man. I don't believe life ever knocked all the boys' brashness out of the man. A second reason for my decision is my approval of the attitude of Diogenes when he asked, of what use is a philosopher? What use is a philosopher who never offends anybody? My third and final reason is the strongest. I've fallen in love with my way of laying out psychology because it has been so useful for me. And so before I die, I want to imitate to some extent the bequest practices of three characters: the protagonist John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, Benjamin Franklin, and my first employer, Ernest Buffett. Bunyan's character, the knight wonderfully named Old Valiant for Truth, and makes the only practical bequest available to him when he says at the end of his life, "My sword I leave to him who can wear it." And like this man, I don't mind if I have misphrased my sword, provided provided I have tried to see it correctly, or if many will not wish to try it, if some who try to wield it may find it serves them not. Ben Franklin, to my benefit, left behind his autobiography, his almanacs, and much else. When he left behind how to run a grocery store and a few things I've learned about fishing. Hmm. Whether or not this last contribution, hmm. Whether or not this last contribution to the genre was the best, I will not say. But I will report that I have now known for generations of Ernest Buffett's descendants, and that the results have encouraged my imitation of the founder. The psychology of human misjudgment. I've long been very interested in standard thinking errors. However, I was educated in an era wherein the contributions of non-patient reading psychology to an understanding of misjudgment meant little approval from members of the mainstream elite. Instead, interest in psychology was pretty well confined to a group of professors who talked and published mostly for themselves, with much natural detriment from isolation and groupthink. Right after my time at Caltech and Harvard Law School, I possessed a vast ignorance of psychology. Those institutions failed to require knowledge of the subject, and of course, they couldn't integrate psychology with their other subject matter when they didn't know psychology. Like the Nietzsche character who was proud of his lame leg, the institutions were proud of their willful avoidance of fuzzy psychology and fuzzy psychology professors. Hmm. Evolution, genetic evolution. I shared this ignorant mindset for a considerable time, and so did a lot of other people. Who are we to think, for instance, of the Caltech course catalog that for 5 years listed just one psychology professor self described as a professor of psycho analytical studies were taught both abnormal psychology and psychoanalysis in literature. Soon after leaving Harvard, I began a long struggle to get rid of the most dysfunctional part of my psychological ignorance. Today, I will describe my long struggle for elementary wisdom and a brief summary of my ending notions. After that, I will give examples, many quite vivid and interesting to me, of both psychology at work and antidotes to psychology-based dysfunction. And I will end by asking and answering some general questions raised by what I have said. This will be a long talk. When I started law practice, I had respect for the power of genetic evolution and the appreciation of man's many evolution-based resemblances to less cognitively gifted animals and insects. I was aware that a man was a social animal, greatly and automatically influenced by behavior he observed in men around him. I also knew that man lived like barnyard animals and monkeys in limited size dominance hierarchies, wherein he tended to respect authority and to like and cooperate with his own hierarchy members while displaying considerable distrust and dislike for competing men in his own hierarchy. Hmm. But this generalized evolution-based theory structure was inadequate to enable me to cope properly with the cognition I encountered. I was soon surrounded by much extreme irrationality displayed in patterns and subpatterns. So surrounded, I could see that I was not going to cope as well as I wished with life unless I could acquire a better theory structure on which to hang my observations and experiences. By then, my craving for more theory had a long history. Inward, always inward. Oddly, I had always loved theory as an aid in puzzle solving and as a means of satisfying my monkey-like curiosity. And oddly, I had found that theory structure was a superpower in helping one get what one wanted, as I had early discovered in school, wherein I had excelled without labor, guided by theory, while many others without mastery of theory failed despite monstrous effort. Better theory, I thought, had always worked for me, and if now available, could make me acquire capital and independence faster and better assist everything I loved. So I slowly developed my own system of psychology, more or less in the self-help style of Ben Franklin, and with the determination displayed in the refrain of the nursery story. Then I'll do it myself. I was greatly the little red hen. I was greatly helped in my quest by two. Wow, what is happening? So much interesting stuff they are going. Was greatly helped in my quest by two turns of mind. First, I had longed for insight by inversion in the intense manner counseled by the great Algebraist Jacobi. In word, always in word. I sought good judgment mostly by collecting instances of bad judgment and pondering ways to avoid such outcomes. Second, I became so avid a collector of instances of bad judgment that I paid no attention to boundaries between professional territories. After all, why should I search for some tiny, unimportant, hard to find new stupidity in my own field when some large, important, easy to find stupidity was just over the fence in the other fellow's professional territory? Besides, I could already see that real world problems didn't neatly lie within territorial boundaries, they jumped right across. And I was dubious of any approach that, when two things were inextricably intertwined and interconnected, would try and think about one thing but not the other. I was afraid if I tried any such restricted approach that I would end up in the immortal words with no brain at all, just a neck head over. Pure curiosity someone later made me wonder how and why destructive cults were often able over a single long weekend to turn many tolerably normal people into brainwashed zombies and thereafter keep them in that state indefinitely. I resolved that I would eventually find a good answer to this cult question if I could do so by general reading and much musing. I also got curious about social insects. It fascinated me that both the fertile female honeybee and the fertile female harvester ant could multiply their quite different normal life expectancy by exactly 20, engaging in one orgy in the sky. The extreme success of the ants also fascinated me how a few behavioral algorithms caused such extreme evolutionary success grounded in extremes of cooperation within the breeding colony, almost always extremes of lethal hostility towards ants outside the breeding colony, even ants of the same species. We are too soon old and too late smart. However, as I later found out, I may have been lucky to avoid for so long the academic psychology that was then laid out in most textbooks. These would not have guided me well with respect to cults and were often written as if the authors were collecting psychology experiments as a boy collects butterflies, with a passion for more butterflies and more contact with fellow collectors, and a little craving for synthesis in what is already possessed. Hmm. The textbooks were often written as if the authors were collecting psychology experiments as a boy collects butterflies. The sale of hundreds of thousands of copies of a book about social psychology was a huge feat, considering that Cialdini didn't claim that he was going to improve your sex life or make you any money. He's talking about influence, the book Influence. When I finally got to the psychology text, I was reminded of the observation of Jacob, the great economist, and many an academic is like the truffle hound, an animal so trained and bred for one narrow purpose that it is no good at anything else. I was also appalled by the hundreds of pages of extremely non-scientific musing about comparative weights of nature and nurture in human outcomes. And I found that introductory psychology text by and large didn't deal appropriately, both numerous and inseparably intertwined now and forever as they interplay in life. As pure ignorance. The text writers showed little interest in describing standard antidotes to standard psychology-driven folly. Popular audience by distinguished psychology professor Robert Cialdini at Arizona State, a very big university, made himself into a super tenured Regents professor at a very young age by devising, describing, and explaining a vast group of clever experiments in which man manipulated man to his detriment, with all this made possible by man's intrinsic thinking flaws. Hmm. I also gave Cialdini a share of Berkshire stock to thank him for what he had done for me and the public. The sale of Cialdini of hundreds and thousands of copies about social psychology was a huge feat, considering that he didn't claim he was going to improve your sex life or make you any money. He wanted to learn how to become less often tricked by salesmen and circumstances. However, as an outcome not sought by Cialdini, was a profoundly ethical man. A huge number of his books were bought by salesmen who wanted to learn how to become more effective in misleading customers. This perverse outcome when my discussion comes to incentive cost bias as a consequence of the superpower of incentives. I also pondered considerably while craving synthesis and taking into account all my previous training experience. The result was Munger's partial summary of the non-patient reading, non-nature versus nurture reading parts of the non-developmental psychology. Each ant, like each human, is composed of a living physical structure plus behavioral algorithms in its nerve cells. In the ant's case, the behavioral algorithms are few in number, almost entirely genetic in origin. It seems obvious that the human brain must often operate counterproductively from unavoidable oversimplicity, albeit usually in trying to solve problems more difficult than those faced by ants that don't have to design airplanes. Cognition is ordinarily situation dependent, so that different situations often cause different conclusions. Reward and punishment superimpose tendency, liking, loving, disliking, hating, doubt avoidance, inconsistency, avoidance, curiosity. Kantian fairness, envy, jealousy, reciprocation, influence from mere association, simple pain avoiding, psychological denial, excessive self regard, over optimism, deprival, superreaction, social proof, contrast, misreaction, stress, influence, availability, misweighing, use it or lose it, drug misinfluence, authority, twaddle, reason, lollapalooza. Never a year passes, but I get some surprise that pushes a little further my appreciation of incentive superpower. The FedEx case, the integrity of the FedEx system requires that all packages be shifted rapidly among airplanes in one central airport each night. The system has no integrity for the customers if the night work shift can't accomplish its assignment fast. And Federal Express has had one hell of a time getting the night shift to do the right thing. They tried moral suasion. They tried everything in the world without luck. And finally, somebody got the happy thought that it was foolish to pay the night shift by the hour when what the employer wanted was not maximize billable hours of employee service, but fault-free, rapid performance of a particular task. Maybe this person thought they paid the employees per shift and let all night shift employees go home. When all the planes were loaded, the system would work better. And lo and behold, that situation worked. If they pay the employees per shift and let all night shift employees go home when all the planes were loaded, the system would work better. Well, I don't understand this. Please this tendency first in my discussion because almost everyone thinks he fully recognizes how important incentives and disincentives are in changing cognition and behavior, but this is not. And so, for instance, I think I have been in the top 5% of my age cohort almost all my adult life and understanding the power of incentives. Yet I've always underestimated that power. Never a year passes, but I get some surprise that pushes a little further my appreciation of incentive superpower. I don't understand. I don't understand. Let all night shift employees go home when all the planes were loaded. The system would work better. I don't understand. Early in the history of Xerox, Joe Wilson, who was then in the government, had similar experience. He had to go back to Xerox because he couldn't understand why its new machine was selling so poorly in relation to its old inferior machine. When he got back to Xerox, he found out that commission arrangements with the salesman gave a large and perverse incentive to push the inferior machine on customers who deserved a better result. Case of Mark Twain's cat that after a bad experience with a hot stove, never again sat on a hot stove either. Never ever think about something else. And you should be thinking about the power of incentives. Incentives, superpowers. I've never seen a management consultant's report that didn't end with the same advice. This problem needs more management consulting services. Human nature, be deviled by incentive cost bias, causes a lot of ghastly abuse under these standard incentive patterns on the board. Cash registers. Repeat behavior that works. It's a behavioral guide that really succeeded for Patterson after he applied one added twist, so did high moral cognition. Would be patent thieves. Rubin gave away all his money to charity before he died, always pointing out that frauds have no pockets. So great was the contribution of Patterson's cash register civilization, and so effectively did he improve the cash register and spread its use that in the end he probably deserved the epitaph chosen for the Roman poet Horace. I did not completely die. Not completely die. Economists have long had a name for the natural results of incentive caused by its agency costs, like punishment, dread, and avoid as much as you can rewarding people for what can be easily faked. Money is the main reward. It can be easily faked. Granny's rule provides another example of reward superpower so extreme in its effects that it must be mentioned here. You can successfully manipulate your own behavior with this rule, even if you are using as reward items that you already possess. Consultant PhD psychologists often urge business organizations to improve their reward systems by teaching executives to use Granny's rule. Children eat their carrots before they get dessert. The business version requires that executives force themselves daily to first do their unpleasant and necessary tasks before rewarding themselves by proceeding to their pleasant task. Given reward superpower, this practice is wise and sound. Moreover, the rule can also be used in the non-business part of life. The emphasis on daily use of this practice is non-accidental. The consultants well know, through the teaching of Skinner, that prompt rewards work best. What will a man naturally come to like and love apart from his parent, spouse, and child? Well, he will like and love being liked and loved. Hmm. My current guess is that sibling rivalry has not yet made it into property law as taught at Harvard. Doubt avoidance. The rare life that is wisely lived has in it many good habits maintained and many bad habits avoided or cured. Proper education is one long exercise in the augmentation of high cognition so that our wisdom becomes strong enough to destroy wrong thinking and gain by resistance to change. Darwin trained himself to intensively consider any evidence tending to disconfirm any hypothesis of his, more so if he thought his hypothesis was particularly a good one. Many a hypocrite is improved by his pretensions of virtue. Many a judge and juror, while pretending objectivity, is gaining objectivity. Innate curiosity. It is important not to put one's brain in chains before one has anywhere near his full potentiality as a rational person. There's a lot of innate curiosity in mammals, but it's non-human. Its non-human version is highest among apes and monkeys. Man's curiosity, in turn, is much stronger than that of his simian relatives. In advanced human civilizations, culture greatly increases the effectiveness of curiosity and advancing knowledge. For instance, Athens, including its colony Alexandria, developed much math and science out of pure curiosity, while the Romans made almost no contribution to either math or science. They instead concentrated their attention on the practical engineering of mines, roads, aqueducts. Curiosity enhanced by the best of modern education, which is by definition a minority, but in many places much else meant to prevent or reduce bad consequences arising from other psychological tendencies. The curious are also provided with much fun and wisdom long after formal education is ended. Envy and jealousy is also extreme in modern life. For instance, university communities often go bananas when some university employee in money management or some professor in surgery gets annual compensation multiples of the standard professional salary. And in modern Western banks, law firms, the envy jealousy effects are usually more extreme than they are university faculties. Many big law firms screening disorder have long treated all senior partners alike in compensation, no matter how different their contributions to firm welfare. It is not greed that drives the world, but envy. And because this is roughly right, one would expect a vast coverage of envy, jealousy in psychology textbook, but no such vast coverage existed when I read my three textbooks. Envy and jealousy were often absent from indexes. Genghis Khan, reproduction tendency. Daily interchange in marriage is also assisted by reciprocation tendency, without which marriage would lose much of its allure. Ants who were suddenly to get atom bombs, all ants would be dead within 18 hours. For long stretches in many wars, no prisoners were taken, the long acceptable enemy being a dead one. Sometimes that was not enough, as in the case of Genghis Khan, who was not satisfied with justice. He insisted on their being hacked into pieces. Compare Genghis Khan, who exercised extreme lethal hostility toward other men, with ants that display extreme lethal hostility toward members of their own species and are not part of their breeding colony. Looks sweetly lovable when compared to the ants. The ants are more disposed to fight and fight with more extreme cruelty. Indeed, E.O. Wilson once waggishly suggested that if ants were suddenly to get atom bombs, all ants would be dead within 18 hours. Nature has no general algorithm making intraspecies turn the other cheek behavior booster or species survival. It is not clear that a country would have good prospects were it to abandon all reciprocate this favor tendency directed at outsiders. Wise employers therefore try to oppose the reciprocate favor tendencies of employees engaging in purchasing. The simplest antidote works best. Don't let them accept any favors from vendors. Mm, Walmart, Walmart. The law schools didn't know or care to teach what Sam Walton so well knew. The very best part of human life probably lies on relationships of affection, wherein parties are more interested in pleasing than being pleased. The very best part of human life probably lies in relationships of affection, wherein parties are more interested in pleasing than being pleased. Even association that appears to be trivial, if carefully planned, can have extreme and peculiar effects on purchasers of products. Commonly see people underappraise both the competency and morals of competitors they dislike. This is a dangerous practice, usually disguised because it occurs on a subconscious basis. This just reminded me of a really beautiful quote. At Berkshire, there I will tweet that maybe. At Berkshire, there's a common injunction: always tell us the bad news promptly. It is only the good news that can wait. Simple pain avoiding psychological denial. 50% success rate implies a 50% failure rate. One should stay far away from any conduct and drift into chemical dependency. Even a small chance of suffering so greater damage should be avoided. When denial is used to make dying easier, the conduct tendencies' most extreme outcomes are usually mixed up with love, death, and chemical dependency. Pain avoiding psychological denial. The reality is too painful to bear, so one distorts the facts until they become bearable. We all do that to some extent, often causing terrible problems. The tendency's most extreme outcomes are usually mixed up with love, death, and chemical dependency. But some people hope to leave life, moving to the iron prescription, it is not necessary to hope in order to persevere. There is something admirable in anyone able to do this, wherein morals usually break down horribly. Addicted persons tend to believe that they remain in respectable condition with respectable prospects. They thus display an extremely unrealistic denial of reality as they go deeper and deeper into deterioration. Freudian remedies fail utterly in reversing chemical dependency, but nowadays Alcoholics Anonymous routinely achieves a 50% cure rate by causing several psychological tendencies to act together counter addiction. Some of the most useful members of our civilizations are those who are willing to clean house when they find a mess there out of control. Man's excess of no, 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 no. Take me back, take me back. Man's excess of self-regard typically makes him strongly prefer people like himself. Psychology professors have had much fun demonstrating this effect in lost water experiments. Experiments all show that the finder of lost water containing identity clues will be most likely to return the water when the owner most closely resembles the finder. Cliquish groups of similar persons will always be a very influential part of human culture, even after we wisely try to dampen the worst effects. Self-regard in the form of a justified pride in a job well done or good lived is a large constructive force. Without such justified pride, many more airplanes would crash. Self-regard, over optimism, the mental rules of thumb that evolution gives you to deal with risk are not adequate. They resemble the dysfunctional golf grip you would have if you relied on a grip driven by evolution instead of golf lessons. The mental rules of thumb that evolution gives you to deal with risk are not adequate. They resemble the dysfunctional golf grip you would have if you relied on a grip driven by evolution instead of golf lessons. Very, very, very intellectual. The best antidote to being triggered into paying foolish prices at open outcry auctions is a simple Buffett practice. Don't go to such auctions. Psychological ignorance can be very expensive. So, what the instructor here many decades ago made a big mistake, in part by the subconscious operation of mind deprival reaction tendency. A friendly broker called and offered me 300 shares of ridiculously underpriced, very thinly traded Belridge oil at $115 per share, which I purchased using cash I had on hand. The next day, he offered me 1,500 more shares at the same price, which I declined to buy, partly because I could only have made the purchase had I sold something or borrowed the required $173,000. This was a very irrational decision. I was a well-to-do man with no debt. There was no risk of loss, and similar no-risk opportunities were not likely to come along. Within 2 years, Belridge Oil sold out to Shell at a price of about $3,700 per share, which made me about 5.4 million poorer than I would have been had I had been psychologically acute. As the state demonstrates, psychological ignorance can be very expensive. Hmm. The best antidote to being triggered into paying foolish prices at open outcry auctions is a simple Buffett practice. Don't go for such auctions. Social proof tendency. The highest reaches of business, it is not uncommon to find leaders who display followership akin to that of teenagers. In the highest reaches of businesses, it is not uncommon to find leaders who display followership akin to that of teenagers. You know, many of his fellow officers considered him the most dangerous man alive. Rubika. Rubika. That's a good photo. That's a good one. Good one. Psychology professors love social proof tendency because in their experiments, it causes ridiculous results. For instance, if a professor arranges for some stranger to enter an elevator wherein 10 compliance practitioners are all suddenly standing so that they face the rear of the elevator, the stranger will often turn around and do the same. The psychology professors can also use social proof tendency to cause people to make large and ridiculous measurement errors. One oil company foolishly buys a mine, other oil companies often quickly join in buying mines. So too, if the purchase company makes fertilizer, both of these oil companies buying fats as they bloomed. That results. Learn how to ignore the examples from others when they are wrong, because few skills are more worth having. This is the one ad that does off disgraceful morals explosion that rocked and shocked the entire city with unprintable scandal. Mm. Learn how to ignore the examples from others when they are wrong, because few skills are more. Cognition misled by tiny changes involving low contrast will often miss a trend that is destiny. Availability misweighing tendency. The idea of fact is not worth more merely because it is easily available to you. The great algorithm to remember in dealing with this tendency is simple. A wise man engaged in learning some important skill will not stop until he's really fluent in it. Use it or lose it. Skills of a very high order can be maintained only with daily practice. The pianist once said that if he failed to practice for a single day, he could notice his performance deterioration, and that after a week's gap in practice, the audience could notice it as well. The hard rule of use it or lose it tendency tempers its harshness for the diligent. If a skill is raised to fluency, instead of merely being crammed and briefly, to enable one to pass some tests, then the skill will be lost more slowly and will come back faster and refreshed with the new learning. These are not minor advantages, and a wise man engaged in learning some important skill will not stop until he's really fluent in it. Mm. In a sense, misinfluence tendency. Twaddle. Some people produce copious amounts of twaddle and others very little. Man is a social animal who has a gift of language is born to prattle and pour out twaddle that does much damage when serious work is being attempted. Some people produce copious amounts of twaddle and others very little. It's a very important part of wise administration to keep prattling people pouring out far away from the serious work. The question why is a sort of Rosetta Stone opening up the major potentiality of mental life. Reason respecting. There is in man, particularly one in an advanced culture, a natural love of accurate cognition and enjoy in its exercise. This accounts for the widespread popularity of crossword puzzles, other puzzles, and bridge and chess columns. You had to tell who was to do what, where, when, and why. You wrote a communication leaving out an explanation of why the addressee was to do what was ordered. Braun was likely to fire you because Braun well knew that ideas got through best when the reasons for the ideas were meticulously laid out. Reason respecting tendency is so strong that even a person's giving of meaningless or incorrect reasons will increase compliance with this order's end request. This has to be demonstrated in psychology experiments wherein compliance practitioners successfully jump to the head of the lines in front of copying machines by explaining the reason I have to make some copies. Of the loser. What could be more ironic than professors using oversimplified notions while studying bad cognitive effects grounded in the mind's tendency to use oversimplified algorithms? The elements of Euclid. One can get all the paradox out of pure math, so why should psychology be shocked by such paradox? Oxford once allowed its best student Samuel Johnson to leave without a degree because he was too poor to continue paying tuition. And with that, I have nothing more to add. That, I have nothing more to add. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Strike Press. Thank you, Charlie Munger. This was a random stroll to poor Charlie's Almanack.